Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Customer Experience Beyond Surveys. My name is Marcia, the Marketing Manager here at Splice, and I'll be your MC. Our webinar will run about 45 minutes with a couple of polls throughout. We'll be concluding with 15 minutes of Q&A. All polls and questions will be facilitated through the Q&A window that should appear on the right-hand side of your screen. You may submit your questions or comments anytime during the presentation, so there's no need to hang on to them until the end when something pops to mind. However, all questions will be addressed during the allotted time at the end of the presentation. Before I begin, I'd like to introduce Splice Software. We're a privately owned Canadian company who helps insurance, finance, and retail companies around the globe deliver highly engaging, data-driven dialogues to their customers. The Splice technology, our patent-pending human voice software, enhances business operations, services, and the customer experience. Today, Splice is pleased to bring together two experts to discuss how you can make journey mapping and the Net Promoter Score surveying work for you and your customer experience goals. Sounds simple? It is. Our speakers today are going to break down how to target your customer experience goals without making it a huge and daunting task or a large spend. One of these lovely speakers is Joan Pepper. Joan considers herself a customer experience architect who takes a structure in need of improvement and remodels it into an enduring edifice with a customer-centric framework, a bedrock of strong analytics, pillars of customer experience competencies, and a cornerstone of engaged and empowered associates. Joan has spent more than 20 years leading Fortune 500 organizations through demanding, turbulent, and steady growth times by creating customer experiences that positively and profitably influence corporate profits. Joan founded J.G. Pepper Consulting in 2015 to serve companies who are launching or redefining their customer experience framework. Prior to J.G. Consulting, she served as AIG's Global Director of Customer Experience Analytics, where she led end-to-end journey mapping and strategy. Joan is a certified customer experience professional and holds a Master of Arts in Psychology. Above all, Joan is a wife and a mother of 2 children. She is also a passionate advocate for adoption. Next, we have the talented Chelsea Caper. Chelsea is a marketing specialist at Splice Software who holds a Bachelor of Technology degree from Ryerson University and a Net Promoter certification from Satmetrics, the leading Net Promoter research and provider firm. Specializing in the development and successful execution of marketing campaigns and Net Promoter Score surveys, Chelsea leverages over 5 years of related experience to help improve customer loyalty and grow advocacy. Off to you, Joan.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I know how busy everybody's days must be. But I would like to spend some time today talking about customer journey mapping and some easy things you can do to move your customer experience efforts forward, again, without spending a lot of money or time, because most of us don't have a whole bunch of extra time or money on our hands. So most companies are committed to improving the customer experience. It's in all of our mission, vision, and values, and I know yours is as well. But commonly, we just don't know how to get started. And companies also understand the importance of customer experience, but you have more practical, tactical issues. You know, the swing needs to get built for all practical purposes. You know, you have noses to the grindstone, you have metrics to meet, you have quarterly reports, you have all those things. So the swing gets built. So this is basically what happens. If you take a look at this graphic, you'll see, well, this is how the customer explained it, then how the project leader understood it, how the analyst designed it, how the business consultant described it, maybe or maybe not, I'd have to take a little offense to that, how the project was documented, what operations installed, how the customer was billed, and then what they really wanted or what they really needed.
So this corporate misalignment and a clear lack of who owns the customer experience. There's also difficulty around organizational change. Now, in the past 15 years, companies have invested large sums of money in customer relationship management systems. And I would say most, if not all, have made real significant service level improvements. But we still have very unacceptable levels of customer churn. We have competitors coming out of the woodwork, and customer satisfaction scores continue to be low. You know, so we have to ask ourselves why. Well, despite the rapid increase in our CRM systems and the fact that we are saying the customer is the center of our business, and we do mean it, what we're achieving at the very best is better sameness. So let's look at some real-world numbers. This is from an Ernst & Young survey. So in today's environment, features and price can be very quickly matched by competitors. Customer experience is becoming one of the primary drivers of differentiation and ultimately high performance. I actually read an article this morning that said customers are even becoming aware of, they're saying, well, that customer experience was bad and that customer experience was good. So now the customers are even speaking the language. So customer experience is becoming part of your brand. Delivering a great experience is becoming much more valuable at a time when loyalty has declined in most industries. This isn't really surprising because in the environment we have the rise of the digital channel, we have vast amounts of information that consumers can get to, so it's very easy for customers to research and switch to a competitor. So in a market that's becoming more commoditized, customer experience is your differentiator and it really is your brand. This is just a slide what it looked like for insurance companies, but there's other industries in here as well because I know you represent multiple industries. So if you look at the Ernst & Young, this is the 2014 Global Consumer Insurance Survey, 44% of the customers had not had an interaction with the insurer in the last 18 months. That's a year and a half. So for every interaction they did have, it's a critical moment of truth. And then they have very high turnover, but still a low trust. And if you look at the trust score by class, supermarkets are pretty high up there. Banks are doing a good job. Car manufacturers, about 80%. Online shopping sites is 78%, and that seems low. People ask me about that one as regards to Amazon. That also includes eBay and some other online shopping sites. Insurance companies are only at 70% in terms of trustworthiness. Pharmaceuticals, they're at 68%. 57% of the consumers want to hear from the insurers at least semi-annually, every 6 months, but 44% haven't heard from them in a year and a half. And 47% of the customers have heard from their insurance company in the past year, probably about a bill or something like that. There's another study by Accenture that also found gaps between what customers expect and what they believe they receive. So for example, nearly two-thirds, 66% of customers surveyed said it was very important to them for their insurer to provide clear and easy to understand information on their policies. But only 27% of respondents said they were very satisfied with their insurer's attempts to do so. What it really means when you roll this all together is that every engagement is an opportunity. So what does the real world look like? Marcia?
So to help Joan and Chelsea understand how your business is organized, we'd like to get your feedback on this poll. The poll will run for the next 40 seconds. It should pop up momentarily. Please select the best response for the question, who actually runs your company? Is it the CEO, the board, or the customer? All right, so with a whopping 29%, the customer is the winner. 17% of people said board, and 8% said CEO. Off to you, Joan.
Well, that's actually a high customer percentage. I don't think I've gotten that one before, but that's really heartening. I like that number. And let me give you some additional real-world numbers, and these are actually pretty funny. 72% of CEOs consider themselves in charge of customer experience, but only 27% of their management colleagues agreed or believed that was the case. If you look at the next slide, 32% of respondents in IT believe their chief information officer is in charge. But you have only 5% of their colleagues in sales, marketing, and general management that agree with them. I think we could all pretty well agree that sometimes IT does run the ship, because if we can't get it programmed and we can't get it working, truly, we can't deliver the experience we want. But it's just curious as to who everybody thinks is in charge. And so if we go to the next one, 35% in sales and marketing believe their CMO is in charge. And coming from that background, I will tell you that I'm surprised this number is this low. I would have expected the sales and marketing group to basically claim 100% of being in charge. But only 13% of the general management and 6% of the operations colleagues believed that was the case. So if you have all this going on, what's it mean for business? Well, the first hurdle is getting a clear outside-in perspective on the customer and what is right and wrong with the customer experience. So you basically can then figure out who owns that part of it. So we're going to move on to the next slide and just take a look at a basic journey or something that you want to get done. I want to thank Stanford for this. But this is getting a cup of coffee. Most of us drink coffee or tea, something in the morning. And you think, okay, I'm going to drink a cup of coffee. How hard could that be? You know, it's not that complex. Getting coffee is not quite honestly rocket science. So if you take a look at this, this is something you want to get done. And a customer journey is nothing more than a picture of something the customer wants to get done. It's no more complicated than that. So in this circumstance, I decide I want a cup of coffee. I get up in the morning, I want some coffee. The first thing that happens is I have to make a decision as to what coffee shop I'm going to go to. And I select shop number 3. Then you ask what happens next. Well, what happens next is I have to drive to the shop. Now you'll notice there's some red lines there. I live in Atlanta. That's traffic. You have to ask, okay, what happens next? Well, you park and you walk. What happens next? You go in the door. What happens next? And I'm waiting in line. I'm waiting in a long line. What happens next? I finally get to the front of the line. It's my moment. I get to talk to my barista, and I, order some fancy coffee with a bunch of Italian names. And then my barista says, would you like a pastry with that? And I say, no, not today. I don't think so. So what happens next? Well, I have to pay. And I could use money, cash. I could use a credit card. I could use a loyalty card. I could use Apple Pay, Google Wallet, any of those things. Well, then what happens next? Well, I have to wait because they have to make my coffee. And then finally, I'm united with my coffee, and I finally get that coffee drink. So something as simple as getting coffee and drinking coffee has these different interaction points within it. And this is a journey. So this is from the customer's perspective. And you'll notice that I didn't talk about a couple of things. One is how they make the coffee, where they purchase the coffee, how they decide on the price of their coffee, who does the financials for the coffee business, how they hire and train their employees, because the customer is not looking at those things. So the difference between a process map or a value map and a journey map is perspective or lens. It's a visual representation of something someone wants to get done. So moving on to the next slide, now that we've done a journey, we can do a journey map. Now, I'm a whiteboard type of girl. I think that you can get a lot of things done without spending a lot of money, and I think the whiteboard is the way to go. So this is exactly the same journey. This says if you look at the beginning, at the very top row, someone wanting coffee all the way through those steps that I talked about to drinking the coffee. And then we're going to look at a couple of different things. Thoughts and feelings, what I'm thinking and feeling, my expectations of the coffee experience, the emotional state, and then suggestions for improvement. So if we go back to thoughts and feelings, we're driving and I'm thinking, gosh, I hope I don't have traffic again today. I'm feeling tired and I just sort of want to get there. And parking and walking, I want an easy spot. I don't want it to be raining. I don't want any road rage. I just want to be able to park and walk. When I go in the door, I'm probably not actually thinking about it. And I put that step in because I attempted to walk through a door at a Subway about 2 weeks ago. The door was locked. They had 2 doors and one was locked. And I thought, wow, that's sort of strange. I wouldn't have thought of that. So that's how that ended up in there. Then I have to wait in line. And generally, if I'm waiting in line, I'm thinking, well, hurry up, And then why is that person in front of me having to ask about it? All the ingredients. You've been behind that person. And then I'm talking to the barista, and I'm thinking, hey, I really like her, and she knows my name. I feel good. It's a good conversation. There's a pastry choice, and I'm thinking, yeah, I want it. Can I afford the calories? You know, gosh, I hate to pass this up, but I'm going to do it. As I'm paying, I'm thinking, well, I like this person. This is the same person I'm dealing with, and every day. When I'm waiting, I'm thinking, well, hurry up. You know, what the heck? Make my coffee. And, you know, then why did that guy get his first? He ordered after I did. But then when I get my coffee, I'm finally thinking, yum. So what are my expectations along the way? Well, I'm expecting no traffic, which would probably mean I'm delusional if I'm in Atlanta, but I am expecting, you know, no traffic. I'm expecting my car to work and everything to go okay. I'm expecting the parking lot to be clean and safe. I want the door to open without effort, not to be locked. Waiting in line, I would want it to be fast. And when I talk to the barista, I expect them to be happy to see me. I expect them to greet me by name. I expect it to be the same person consistently that I like. The pastries, I want them to be good stuff. When I pay, I want it easy, and I want it to be what I expected. I don't want any surprises here. And for my wait, I don't want it to be very long. And I do expect my coffee to be pretty standard, what I'm expecting, and good. So what's my emotional state? Now, the emotional state isn't like, am I unbalanced or balanced or anything like that. It's whether or not I'm having a positive or negative emotion during each of these states. And so that black line that runs across, not quite straight across the center of it is your center line. And I didn't have a red marker this day, but anything above it would be a positive emotion, and anything below it would be negative. And there's many, you know, you're going anywhere from joy at the top to grief at the bottom. So when I'm choosing my shop, I'm feeling reasonably neutral. When I'm driving, I'm not feeling very happy about it. When I'm parking and walking, you know, it's just a hassle. I'm not feeling real positive about it. As I'm going in the door, I'm hopefully just sort of in a neutral state and not thinking much about it. When I'm waiting in line, again, I don't like waiting. I'm feeling impatient. Impatient being in negative emotion, I'm below line there. Talking to the barista, they're friendly. I recognize them. I have a small relationship with this person, even if it's just every day, and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling positive. Pastry choices, it's good stuff. Feeling pretty good about what's there. Paying, as long as it's what I expect, it's probably going to be neutral, as long as it's quick. And when I'm waiting, you know, I don't like waiting. No one does, and so I'm a little impatient there. And when I'm drinking my coffee, I'm united with it. That's a real positive experience. So once you have this and you have the emotional state of the individual or your customers, and you're not going to do it for one individual, you're going to do it for a group of customers that share commonalities, and you would call that a persona. So if you've heard that running around, a persona is when you do create an actual person, and I'm using myself here, but I represent a group of customers that are going to act in a like way. There's no one persona for your company. There's going to be a couple of them. In any event, then you are able to go have suggestions for improvement. So I did use a focus group here of one, which would be my son, and here's what he came up with. Why are you parking? There should be a drive-through. And I thought, yeah, you've got a point there. He also suggested during the drive time, if I got stuck in traffic, they could use a coffee delivering drone. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's a pretty darn good idea. It's not on the chart, but it's a pretty good idea. Waiting in line, why couldn't you pre-order it from your phone? When I'm talking to the barista, I could have like my own ringtone or, you know, something to greet me, something real fancy, you know, pastry choice, maybe buy one, get one free to bring home to the kids. Paying, he didn't really have any suggestions for that. And then while I was waiting, maybe I could get a 5-minute massage. And that would probably take those negative points where you can see they drop below that emotional line and move them up. So this is a customer journey map, and this is a real simple one. What's not overlaid on this map, and what a lot of us do for a living, is what's called voice of the customer, which Chelsea and Marcia will talk about. Data, internal data, which you're also going to be using because your internal data is going to probably tell you where some pain points are there already, and voice of the employee, which is really, really important. But this is a basic journey map that you're going to be able to use. So let's go to the next slide. I come from an insurance background, and I know we have different backgrounds on the line, but most journeys aren't actually linear. They're circular. You want to keep your customers. You don't want to have a lot of churn. And this is for a homeowner's, insurance policy. Most of us have homeowners insurance, so hopefully you can relate to this one. You know, you become aware you need it. You then purchase it. Somewhere in the background, the company's setting it up. You may seek help because you are having a problem with a basic issue. You're going to pay a bill. You may submit a claim. You will review it or update it, or at least someone will do that for you. You may expand it. You may extend it, which means you're going to stay with the company, and you may renew it. So this is what it would look like, basically, for a homeowner's insurance policy for a one-year period. And again, it's not linear. And you can see all those subpoints. All those subpoints are different touch points within the phases. So you can look at customer journeys from multiple levels. The one I just showed you on the coffee journey, that's the overall life cycle, and it would match the dark gray on this graph. You can also look at the individual phase and do just that phase and the journeys within it. So if you did that under purchase, purchasing would include getting a quote, customers comparing options, negotiating it, asking for it to be bound, and documenting, et cetera. So you can do this at, more than one level. You're going to go either high or you're going to go wide and deep. So just picking this one, let's go to the next slide. And I'm going to take one phase, and we're going to look at the journey within that. And that's experiencing a loss. If you've ever had a homeowner's insurance claim, it's a pretty traumatic thing. And you're going to go through some different phases. So the stages, when you have a loss, you're going to call it the insurance company. Then you're probably going to have to wait to talk to an adjuster. And then you're going to definitely have to wait some time in between there while they figure out, do they, let's say it's a fire, do they rebuild it, replace, what do we do? Is it jewelry? Do we, pay it? So there's definitely some serious wait time in there. You finally will get or agree to a settlement, and then you're going to receive a check, or they're going to get the repairs built and they'll pay the contractors. Either way, you're going to be back in your home. So that's when you experience a loss. So thoughts and actions that are there. It's horrible. This is not something that you wanted to happen, and you may be sort of stunned if it's big and you can't believe it happened to you and you don't know what to do. And, you're thinking, oh, my gosh, do I have to live with my mother-in-law? And, what is it's going to take? You call on the company, you're expecting that they will tell you what you need to know, and you expect that they know how hard this is for you. And when you're talking to the rep, you don't want to be punching through a whole big IVR. You want to talk to somebody who can help you. When you're waiting, you're not in your home. And you're wondering, why is it taking so long? And a lot of people, and I've heard this one, that I've paid for 20 years, and then no one will call me back. What's going on with that? When you're talking to the adjuster, you're thinking, wow, she gets it. Or maybe you're thinking, what's wrong with this person? She's probably in the wrong job, or she got up on the wrong side of the bed. You're probably a little frustrated because you feel like maybe you're having to give the same information over and over to maybe 5 different people. While you're waiting, you're wondering, when's this going to be done? I'm tired of living outside of my home. Just sort of what's going to happen. When you get the settlement, you may think they're not being fair to me. Or you're going to think, gosh, they're really great. And I love my agent. Or you could think, oh, yeah, it took long enough. So when you finally get back in your home, you may be at a stage where you think, you just can't believe how traumatic this has actually been. And then you're going to tweet everybody. And you're probably been keeping them up to date on your Facebook. And at this point, it really becomes important whether this is a positive or a negative experience for you. Expectations, what's going on? Well, when you have a loss, you're thinking everything is covered and the company or broker can help you. When you call the company, you want an empathetic person. You don't want someone who just answers the phone, name, policy number. You want an empathetic person, something bad just happened to you. And you want to get some answers right away because this is very important. When you're waiting, you want this to be as important to the company as it is to you. And you want during this wait to feel that it's going well and it's fast. When you're talking to the adjuster, again, you want somebody who cares about the fact that you just had a pretty bad loss. And you want consistency. You want to talk to the same person every time, and you want them to be highly qualified. Again, when you're waiting, you want to know exactly what's going on. Nobody likes waiting. It's not a status any customer or any human being likes to be in. But you do want some assurance that they're going to make it right, and again, it's going to be fast. And with your settlement, you want everything to be covered. You want it to be fair. You want it to be fast. And then when you finally get to the end of this, you want everything back to normal, and you're going to have enough coverage, and you're going to have experts in everything that they do. So if you take a look at a hypothetical emotional state during this, when you experience a loss, it's a negative emotion. It could be anywhere from just total shock to minor irritation if it was a little bit of a little loss. When you call the insurance company, I have that at negative. That can be extremely high or extremely low from my experience, and so I sort of averaged it right there. You can get real frustrated at this point, or you can be really relieved. When you're waiting, it's negative. That's a human condition. Talking to the adjuster, it's a positive point here. It's somebody who really cares, somebody who knows what they're doing. Again, waiting, negative. And when you're getting or agreeing to a settlement, you're feeling pretty good, and when you're finally back in your home, you're feeling much happier. So knowing this, you can take a look at where the biggest gaps are, where our most negative points are, and say, hey, what can we do to improve that? And in this case, maybe you could have prevented the loss with information on something that stops water from running. There's devices that actually do that, or fire safety, whatever it might be. When you are calling the insurance company, you want employees that are empathetic, you want them armed with the right tools, and you want to be able to report the loss however it is that you want to report it, picture on your cell phone or what have you. You want to have some instant communication. You want it to be instant two-way communication. You don't want to have to submit a question and wait 3 days for it to come back. So we could do that. We can make instant communication. There's apps for that. And we could set up rapid pay for the customer so they could at least take some steps to get back to their normal state. We could work to get stable staff. We could do something about our corporate turnover, and that would help meet the customer's expectations. And we would arm our staff with the right tools, and we give them some authority. Again, we could then put real-time two-way communication in, and then we can fix whatever's causing the delay. There's a lot of things that could cause the delay. We can fix it. Maybe there's payment options. Maybe we can, if it's not a big amount, we could drop it into PayPal or send them a Visa card, whatever it might be. Or maybe we could just give them a welcome home basket. Just, a little extra touch that shows them that we do care. So this is what a customer journey would look like. And then you're going to concentrate again on your biggest gaps. There may be circumstances where, if you look at the green dots, the emotional state is above the line. And there's sometimes where it's so high above the line, if that's not your brand, you do not want to change things that are integral to your brand, but you may actually be able to save a little bit of money in places where you're maybe overachieving to a huge degree. But don't do that unless you look at it carefully. Okay, so let's go on to the next stage. So everybody says, hey, yeah, fine and good. This is great. I'm just going to go do this at my company. But here's the reality. The reality of life is that there's different forces in companies. There's different controls. There's different silos. And that's why we took the poll. We have differing agreements as to who's running the company. But all of those people are running part of the company. And so before, you've got to get everyone together. And organizational adoption and accountability, it's tough. It's really tough. It's a lot tougher than people think. So you have to know where the force is in your company, and you're going to have to work with it while you create your journey map. And if you don't, you're going to have a real pretty picture, but probably very little, if any, change. So, customer journey mapping, it's new lingo, I'll say last 5 years. But the idea of working with the Force wasn't just invented with that, or with Star Wars. If you go back to the Art of War, Sun Tzu, which is 2,600 years old, he said the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. And that's also true with organizational change. So let's move on to the next slide. When you have organizational change, you first have to, or journey mapping, to start any of this, you need to know where the force is in your company. If you do one thing, for example, insurance, financial services, banking, you're probably a vertical industry. You do one thing, you do it extremely well, hopefully. You've been doing it for a long time. Most of your metrics are internally focused, and you aren't expanding into other product lines. Everything is lined up to deliver one program or one product. The danger with vertical is the longer a company's around in a vertical industry, the more and more KPIs and focus they have that's internal, and it's not unusual for the customer to be, the next office above you. So that's one thing to take a look at. If you're a marketing-driven company, your CMO is driving the company. You'll know that. It's going to be in the messages that go out. Sales is going to be all about top line. If you're an organization that phrases everything in top line, you are a sales organization. Product is sort of like Apple. Everyone wants to be the next Apple, but you really can't be the next Apple. Apple's Apple. But product is what runs the company, and you're going to have a lot of designers. You're going to have a lot of people that are centered around that, and then everything goes from product. IT does run a lot of the companies, especially if you're delivering something like software as a service platform. So you need to know that as well as the CIO. And you can have others that aren't on this list. They could be your operations people, your finance people. A lot of times legal is running the company. If it's an insurance company, it could be actuarial. It could be any of these. But why is it important? Why is it important to know this? It's important to know this because you need to phrase your need to do journey mapping, or how you're going to do journey mapping, in the language of the forest. So if you have finance running your company, you want to be talking about ROI, return on investment, right up front. If you have sales running as your core strength or the force, you want to be talking about how this is going to improve the top line. You're going to change your language as to the why of journey mapping. Why do we want to improve the customer experience? So that you go with the force in your company. That's the language that your C-suite is going to know best and will respond to best. It's also the people that, if you don't know who this is, those are the people that are going to be able to sabotage your project. You could have a great meeting, and basically what happens is you walk out and no one absolutely does anything. So before you do a simple journey map, know this force and know the right language. The second tip is, when you do the journey map, get somebody from each of those different silos that you have. You may have product silos, and you may also have organizational or functional silos. If you get a representative from each of those silos in the room to do this journey map collaboratively, you then have everybody invested in the program, and that's the beginning of starting to get accountability and adoption, because unless you have that, again, your journey map will just be a pretty picture. Just to summarize, journey mapping, you can do that today after you hang up. You only need a whiteboard and a marker. It's 80 steps. Make sure you know what language to speak in when you're doing it or when you're presenting the case, and try to get a cross-functional group before you begin, because you want to have organizational adoption of improving the customer experience. So I'm going to pass it off to Chelsea to talk about some tools that you can add on to journey maps to help understand your customers.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Joan. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you today. I'd like to open by saying it's no longer enough to keep customers satisfied by only meeting their expectations. Delighting customers is the primary basis for the Net Promoter System. And according to SAP metrics, this means exceeding customer expectations. Customer delight is about creating an individual experience for every customer and going the extra mile to enhance their relationship with your brand. Since the goal of every business should be to delight customers, receiving a delightful customer experience should not come as a surprise. The unfortunate part, it does. But I'd like you to ask yourself, if you're unable to keep your current customers happy, why bother spending the money to get them in the first place? Now that you've had a moment to reflect, did you know in insurance, providing personalized customer experiences is a top 3 priority for 73% of insurers? According to the Accenture Global Consumer Pulse survey, 65% of consumers switched at least one of their providers due to poor service. This figure has been increasing steadily year by year, up from 49% in 2005. In finance, the commoditization of banking is a trend impacting client attrition rates. Financial Publishing Services estimates that banks are losing customers at an average rate of 12.5% per year. And within the retail sector, 91% of unhappy customers will not willingly do business with you again. These statistics make us more aware of the impact customer loyalty and churn have on the growth of business. While you may already be implementing initiatives to target retention, how are you measuring these initiatives? Using Net Promoter Score in the ultimate question, how likely would you be to recommend X company to a friend or colleague, you'll be able to understand the heart of your customer relationship. Recommendation is the sincerest expression of customer and brand loyalty. So the ultimate question becomes more than just a question. It becomes a success metric. It's time to discuss implementation of the ultimate question through customer surveys. First, transactional surveys occur shortly after a customer has interacted with an organization. The survey is based entirely on the customer's most recent experience with the brand. For example, completing a sale, receiving an invoice, or contacting a service center. As a result, transactional NPS surveys allow businesses to get customers' opinions when their interactions are fresh in their minds, and they can provide them more specific, detailed information. Transactional surveys allow businesses to find out what caused a customer's change in opinion and either reinforce it for a positive shift or address the reason for it to prevent a negative one from solidifying. This gives businesses the chance to address negative customer experiences and recover those customers before they leave, spread negative opinions to their network, or both. Keeping customer journeys in mind, transactional surveys solicit customer opinions at a time when they're most likely to have undergone a shift in opinion, and Joan has a great example of this.
When you have these NPS surveys, you're going to be using this information for each transaction. Completing a sale or receiving an invoice, those are all going to be a phase or a touch point. And you're going to use this information right here to inform your customer journeys. You're going to be able to map this easily to each touch point that you're taking a look at. Back to you, Chelsea.
Thanks, Joan. So on to relationship surveys. These occur quarterly or biannually and ask customers about their overall experience. This allows businesses to measure a customer's happiness, loyalty, or advocacy after they've had more time to use a product or experience the service long term. This feeds into the greatest advantage of relationship NPS. Relationship NPS provides a business with a regular performance benchmark to track over time and to measure against others in the industry. Irrespective of survey type, it's time to gather results and segment customers into one of 3 categories: passives, promoters, or detractors. Promoters are brand advocates responsible for your ultimate question with a score of 9 or 10. They're loyal individuals facilitating organic growth by highly recommending your brand to their network. Passives, scoring 7 or 8, express indifference to a company or a brand and are easily swayed by competitive offerings. Last, detractors, scoring 0 to 6, are extremely dissatisfied customers who delay growth through negative word of mouth. Do you know which category your customers are in? Segmenting customers in this way allows businesses to measure the number of delighted customers and ultimately discover growth potential. According to Bain & Company, organizations who effectively utilize Net Promoter methodology grow at more than twice the rate of competitors. To elaborate on this, the way converting detractors to promoters contributes to business growth extends across 3 key verticals. First, promoters defect less. Second, promoters buy more. And third, promoters drive business through positive word of mouth. This is an example with graph research from Satmetrics. I've chosen to display the significant difference between detractors and promoters, but in case you're wondering, passives tend to hover between the 2. As we can see, promoters generally defect at lower rates than detractors, which means they have a longer, more profitable relationship with a company. But how does this translate to growth? With customer acquisition costs increasing, reducing customer churn is a sustainable way to grow your business. Knowing that promoters churn less means you can invest more in creating a customer experience that turns passives and detractors into promoters. If you're still not convinced, did you know that acquiring new customers can cost as much as 5 times more than satisfying and retaining current customers? The second way to quantify the value of promoters is to understand how many products are purchased by each customer category. According to Tapmetrics, and as seen in this example, on average, promoters buy more than detractors. To bring it back to Delight, promoters buy more because you've gone the extra mile, and creating a positive experience using some of the journey mapping Jones talked about makes for a shorter mile. When you delight your customers, it ends up coming full circle back to your organization.
Sorry, Chelsea, but I was just going to say, going back to the first example, the coffee shop, if you look at it this way, just in practical purposes, you may have gone into a Starbucks or another coffee shop, and there's stacks of coffee, there's mugs, there's coolers, there's obviously the impulse purchases by the cash register, but there's a whole bunch of stuff. And you might be thinking to yourself, who buys all this stuff? Or maybe you're the one who does. But the promoters are the ones who buy the stuff. And predominantly, they're walking around with a mug with a Starbucks logo on it to boot. So not only are they buying more and giving more money, they're actually even promoting your company outside. So that's sort of how it ties back into just a real simple example.
Great example, Joan. Thank you. Detractors account for 80% of negative word of mouth. Stories of excellent customer service often get shared locally, throughout an industry, and sometimes virally. The power of word of mouth is undeniable, especially now with the strong influence of social media. As you can see, Twitter and other social media channels are flooded with negative word of mouth. So much so, businesses have dedicated teams to respond to complaints. Large-scale studies have consistently shown that trusted word of mouth has a far greater impact on buying decisions than traditional ads. Joan, off to you.
Taking a look at the graphic here, you can sort of see, this is sort of a graphic illustration of promoter to a detractor. On the left-hand side, that's a detractor. That's, the person who is, called in a homeowner's claim and for the third time is talking to yet another person. They're not happy. All the way to your right would be your passive. It's as they expect. Nothing's going wrong. They're neither unhappy nor happy with you. But what you're aiming for is dead center here, and that's going to be your promoter. That's going to be somebody that, although they have had like a really bad experience, insurance claims are, not good, they feel good about it at the end of it because of the way it was handled, and they will tell their friends and their neighbors, and that's really where we want to end up on that.
The promoters and detractors that Joan and I just spoke about have had a significant influence on businesses and industries as a whole. Temkin Group, a leading customer experience research, consulting, and training firm, researched this impact by measuring the Net Promoter Scores of 291 companies across 20 industries. Here's a glimpse of the findings. As you can see on this chart, retailers and insurance carriers have an average NPS of 30, and banks have an average NPS of 23. To bring these scores into context, the 3 companies with the highest scores are USAA with a Net Promoter Score of 70, and Lexus and Mercedes-Benz, each with a Net Promoter Score of 62. These companies have far surpassed the industry average, but where does your company stand in comparison? Now that you know the impact NPS has, it's important to touch on the final component of the Net Promoter System, closing the loop. Closing the loop means interviewing all survey respondents to help identify areas of improvement. The actionable customer feedback gained from the follow-up interviews empowers companies with the information needed to improve business practices. As depicted in this workflow, implementing the customer's suggested improvements shows them you've heard and value their feedback, which decreases the number of detractors and increases the percentage of promoters over time. Let's walk through this workflow together. Step 1, a business is interested in learning about customer experience and similarly their Net Promoter Score. Step 2, the organization invests in Net Promoter Score and implements a survey program. Step 3, survey responses are gathered and customers are segmented into 3 categories: promoters, passives, and detractors. Step 4, Within a specified period of time, all respondents are followed up with. According to Satmetrics, it's best to follow up with detractors within 48 hours and promoters within 5 business days. Step 5, as your business listens to the voice of its customers and employees, those ultimately responsible for providing the experience, it's important to document findings. Joan and I advise that a business use this data to better inform the customer journey. The last and final step is to discuss findings amongst your employees who are responsible for providing the customer's experience. These employee conversations, paired with customer insights, will provide you with what you need to create better business practices and processes that improve loyalty, reduce churn, and ultimately help your business grow. The whole point of Net Promoter Score is to listen to the voice of your customers and use their feedback to instruct change, reduce churn, and increase loyalty. I believe Charles Darwin reinforces this movement best. It is not the strongest of species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It is the one that is most adaptable to change.
If we wanted to bring it all together, just as a quick example, here's the coffee insurance journey that we did. And let's say that we had our NPS results in. We're also going to look at some other data, but just look at the NPS. Well, I chose shop 3. Wonder why? Well, we find out that the employee NPS for shop 3 is the highest. So the employee experience there is great. My guess is the customer experience is also impacted. Parking and walking, well, the survey shows that just not having a drive-through correlates with a detractor. And that also is going to give us some information to inform our design. Waiting in line. The employee survey actually told us that we didn't have enough staff, so it's correlating with that down point. Talking to a barista, the employee NPS survey shows happy employees, and which probably goes to why I'm having a great experience. And then the customer NPS survey actually shows a correlation to that. And then at the final weight, the NPS survey shows detractors due to the wait time. Again, helps us inform design and suggestions for improvement moving forward. So you can just put it all back together again. And the one thing that I really want to emphasize, and the research has supported this in many, many ways. It's not just Richard Branson telling us that the way you treat your employees is the way you will treat your customers. It's empirically supported. It is true that your customer experience will never exceed your employee experience, or what we may parlance in our language call it employee engagement, or you may have different words for it. But bottom line, that's why measuring your employee experience is critical to improving your customer experience.
Thanks, Joan. So as Joan mentioned, a great place to start with surveying is to ask your employees and get their voice. We've already mentioned repeatedly, employees are the face and voices of your brand, literally so. So it's crucial that you make them happy. And while your HR team or other teams are likely working around the clock to execute on this task, have you taken the time to listen to the direct feedback of your employees? An internal employee NPS survey, otherwise known as eNPS, is a great place to start. Splice feels very passionately about this, so we're willing to offer a free eNPS survey campaign to any webinar attendee that would like to request it. You can start working on NPS strategy from a manageable yet meaningful place through focusing on listening to your employees. So we'd like to move now into Q&A. We have a few minutes left. So for those of you who haven't already done so, please type your questions in the comment box on the right-hand side. It's marked Q&A, and address them to one of the panelists, either Chelsea or Joan. All right, so the first one is directed to Chelsea. Is the Employee Net Promoter Score program free?
Yes, it's free. We're offering it to all people who express their interest either in the poll that just passed, or we'll be sending out a form in our follow-up email. Just complete that, and the Splice representative will be in touch with you.
Perfect. Thanks, Chelsea. The next question is directed to Joan. In your experience, does journey mapping or surveying come first?
Does journey mapping or surveying come first? I think the first thing that you want to do is, well, first off, gain alignment that that's what you're going to do. But after that, I think that you have to at least know what your journey looks like, because you cannot just randomly survey people and ask a bunch of questions. Now, an NPS survey with a relational survey can definitely come first, and you will know, you'll be able to take the pulse of what's going on. You can also have a post-transaction NPS survey. Most of us in the insurance business will use like a post-claims transactional survey. You probably already have this data, but you want to gather all the data that you have. Use that, do the journey mapping, and from there, find out what you need more information on. So you probably already doing both of these to some extent, and it's sort of a chicken and egg, but I would say gather the information that you can first. Definitely get it from your employees. There's no cost, you're already paying them, and use that first. I always get the employee information before I try to do anything.
Perfect, thank
you.
Hope
that's sufficient.
So here is another one for you. You mentioned taking this idea up. So they're asking, how do I bring this idea to the board to make them understand the impact?
Okay, so that's the big bogey of organizational adoption and accountability. So, and there's a lot of answers to this. It's sort of a long subject, and feel free to reach out to me. By the way, I'm on LinkedIn. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about this. But you bring it to the board in the language of the company. So you're going to want to speak to the return on investment or the ROI of customer experience. And the board is there simply, to make sure that your company makes a profit. So you're not going to walk in with, and say, here's this arts and crafts project that we want to do. You want to have the return on investment for it. There are use cases in the industry that you can use. There are also tools out there. Forrester has a tool, and most large companies subscribe to it, which is the ROI of customer experience that you can use. So there's different tools to do this. The biggest thing you need to do, though, is present it in the language that is concise and what the board needs.
Perfect, thanks. So next question is, are there options to test surveying before running it live? And that's directed to Chelsea.
To answer this question simply, there definitely is. And I'd recommend doing that through eNPS. And that is best done through eNPS, so you can do a test run. You can run it past your employees and see if you're receiving the feedback that you want, and if the questions are clear and concise and are asked in the right way, that's going to get you the results you're looking for.
Thanks, Chelsea. And just a reminder, if you did submit, or if you missed the poll to submit your request to participate in a free NPS pilot, Splice will be sending a follow-up email. There did come a question in clarifying, so you will get a second chance to register. And the final question, we only have time for one more. So this one is actually a two-part. The first part is directed to Joan. It's saying, do you recommend bringing a CX expert on board to create a journey map? And the second part of that is the same for Chelsea. So Joan, I'll let you kick it off.
Yes, I do. However, I really want to qualify that. There are a lot of people who do journey mapping and a lot of CX experts. I think before you bring anybody outside your company on board, what you need to do is look at their qualifications. Forrester actually has a report, 7 things to look for. I think that's something you want to do. I think you also want to make sure you know what scope you want to look at. And, because you could be looking at a 1.5-year project or 2 days. So you need to know what your scope is before you make those type of decisions. You probably have an internal team already that can do this with a little bit of assistance or guidance. And I always recommend that if you do bring someone in, that you do it with the concept of immersion training, and then when that person leaves, you should be fully capable of doing this on your own. Unless you prefer to have consultants do it. Sometimes you do have to have consultants come in simply because your organization, you already know the answer, but sometimes they believe it better when it comes from an outside party. The other benefit of an outside party is outside parties aren't invested in your business, and so we're a little bit more subjective. But I think you need to know your scope. I think you have to be very careful on who you bring in. And also, you want to make sure that your staff has immersion training so that when the person leaves, you're fully capable of doing this on your own. You need to get your best ROI off of this. It shouldn't be a long process either, by the way. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Joan. So I'm just going to jump in and answer the second half of the question, which was, do you recommend bringing an NPS expert in to run a successful NPS campaign? And I'd like to suggest yes. I suggest this because they're going to be able to analyze the results, help you formulate your questions, help you segment your customer categories, and really get you the feedback and the opportunity for growth that you're looking for. There's various options available. You can do this, again, like Joan mentioned, through consulting, or you can do this by getting certified yourself through the Satmetrics Net Promoter certification program.
All right, thank you both for those answers. On behalf of the speakers and myself, we'd like to say thank you for joining us. As an attendee, just a reminder, you will receive a follow-up email in the following weeks with the webinar recording, a slide deck, and you'll also receive a Journey Map template courtesy of Joan Pepper, as well as a brand new Splice NPS white paper before it's publicly released. In that email, you will also get the chance to request an eNPS pilot, so you haven't missed your chance. And again, if you did indicate that you'd like to take advantage of the eNPS campaign, we saw a couple of responses come in, you will receive an email from a fellow Splicer letting you know the next steps for that. Thanks again for joining, and take care, everyone.